Welcome to the Electric Wire podcast. I'm your host, Kristen Jilks. I'm the executive director of the Customers First Coalition, which is a coalition to preserve Wisconsin's affordable and reliable electricity. On today's episode, we're discussing energy assistance and customer issues during the pandemic. I'm joined by Barb Klug, who is the Home Energy Plus Bureau Director within the Division of Energy, Housing, and Community Resources at the Wisconsin Department of Administration, where she's worked for over 20 years. She's also the chair of the board of the National Energy Assistance Directors Association. Also joining today's discussion is Kristy Nieto, the administrator of the Division of Digital Access, Consumer, and Environmental Affairs at the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin. She oversees commission offices and programs that work to make energy, water, and high-speed internet service more affordable, accessible, and environmentally responsible to benefit all the people of Wisconsin. Our goal today is to help policymakers and anyone interested in energy issues here in Wisconsin better understand how energy assistance is administered, how funding is being distributed, and what resources are available to in-need households as Wisconsin's moratorium on disconnecting electric customers from service comes to an end. Each year, Wisconsin prohibits utilities from disconnecting customers during the winter months for safety reasons, and during the pandemic, the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin extended this moratorium on disconnections for health and safety reasons as well. This means utilities have been prohibited from disconnecting customers for non-payment since November of 2019, but that historically long disconnection moratorium will end on April 15th. And there are resources coming in from the federal government to help tackle account balances for in-need households. But with so much going on, sometimes all of the programs can be hard to decipher. And I want to say a big thank you again to Kristy and Barb for sharing their expertise during this incredibly busy time. Welcome, Barb. Welcome, Kristy. Thank you so much for joining us on the Electric Wire. Barb, I want to start with you. Obviously, this last year has been wildly unexpected because of the pandemic. What assistance has been coming in from the federal government above and beyond what you typically see? And how is Wisconsin administering it?
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you so much for having me today. I'm very happy to be here and to talk about the Wisconsin Home Energy Assistance Program. Above the normal low-income Home Energy Assistance Program, which the acronym, we use a lot of acronyms in state government, LIHEAP. Besides the LIHEAP funding, we did receive from the CARES Act, there was $900 million for LIHEAP released back in May of 2020. And of that $900 million for LIHEAP in the CARES Act, Wisconsin received just over $8 million. And so, how does it differ from, what we normally have? Well, we normally get the LIHEAP allocation, our annual award, and that has been running around because we've been operating under a continuing resolution. That annual award for Wisconsin has been just around 100 million. So we received this 8.1 million and we had 2 years to use that funding. And so working with the Public Service Commission, when they extended the moratorium, our division, which is the Division of Energy, Housing, and Community Resources, which the acronym that we use for that is DECR. So when I say DECR, that really is our division within DOA. We then decided to use this CARES Act at the beginning of this heating season. Our heating season runs October 1st through May 15th. And so we put that $8 million into our crisis funding to be able to help folks that were accumulating arrears from, being impacted by COVID. And so what that did for this heating season, then since we had this additional 8 million, we then had more funding for a regular benefit. And so again, we received in the LIHEAP allocation about 104 million for the start of this year for fiscal year 21. And so that then pushed our average benefit up. We were able to increase our average benefit for fiscal year 21. And so that was a very nice addition to have that funding. We normally don't receive that additional funding. So that was kind of what happened at mid-pandemic. I guess I don't even know if it's really mid, but May of 2020, we received that additional funding.
Got it. Barb, do you mind telling us who is eligible for LIHEAP?
You bet. I would love to. Anybody that is at 60% of the state median income and below, and has a energy burden. So if they have a bill at a utility or another type of vendor, some have bulk fuels. And so as long as they have an energy burden and they live in the state of Wisconsin and they are at the, 60% of state median income or below, they potentially are eligible.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So when that additional 8.1 million came in, that was targeted for individuals who had been impacted by COVID?
Yes, right. We wanted to be able to have that additional crisis money, and then also put additional money into our regular benefits to bump them up. We projected to serve every year. We project to serve so many households, and we're pretty close on that. Obviously, last year our caseload was up about 10% due to the pandemic. We extended our heating season. We let individuals apply all year long last year. Instead of ending at May 15th, we went to September 30th, which was a big help. And so right now we're running about 9% up compared to even last year. So there's even an increase right now. We're projecting to serve at least another 200,000 households this year, in which we did last year as well. So yeah, there's a lot of people that apply, and our average benefit is around $380 some dollars, depending on what type of fuel heats your home and how many people live in your or how many people live in your house and what type of fuel you have, to heat your home. There has been a lot of other funding that it did come in. I'm sure folks have heard about it. One of them is out of the Consolidated Appropriation Act, $25 billion for rental and utility assistance programs. And in our division, we also run the Wisconsin Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And so we've been using that funding to pay off arrears already. And so we targeted people. There was some policy associated with that funding. And so people that received unemployment benefits that showed that they were impacted by COVID, we issued approximately $1.3 million, probably in March, for those households that did apply for energy assistance so far this year. And we did pay off their arrears. So that funding that did come into Wisconsin, the $386 million out of that $25 billion, really was for rental assistance, but we could also use it for utility arrears. And so we did do that bulk payment. We like automated payments, we did that here. The other funding that is unusual that we haven't received before, and we're still waiting to receive that funding, is the Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program. I'm sure folks have heard about that. And that's $638 million. We're estimating that Wisconsin will receive about 8 to 10 million of that. Right now, we had to say that we wanted to accept that funding for Wisconsin. And so the Department of Administration did submit designee letters saying, yes, we're interested in having that in our division. And then we will be issuing payments directly to water utilities for the individuals that are eligible for the WEAP, which is our Wisconsin Home Energy Assistance Program. But we haven't received that funding yet. Like I said, so we don't know how much it's going to be. So we're working right now with the water utilities, getting vendor agreements set up with them so that we can make that payment. And then the last big one that we're very excited about is the supplemental LIHEAP funding that was part of the American Rescue Plan for 2021. And that was $4.5 billion of LIHEAP funding. Wisconsin should receive about 110 to 115 million. It's hard to say because our federal partners, haven't issued the award letter yet for that funding either. So we're estimating what that might be. But what we're doing is we reached out to all the investor-owned utilities and asked them for their arrears amount. And so similar to what we did before with the households with unemployment who are renters, this is everybody that has an investor-owned utility as a vendor. The utilities have been great. They've been sending us their arrears for everybody that has received an energy assistance payment. So we're going to use this supplemental funding as soon as we get the award letter and start issuing bulk payments to the investor-owned utilities. So those are, I'm sure you guys know that, but it's like Madison Gas and Electric, We Energies, Excel Energy, Alliant, and Wisconsin Public Service. So those are the 5 investor-owned utilities. We've been paying off arrears on bulk fuels and other types using some of the WERA funding, and then that 8.1 that I talked about earlier, the Crisis CARES Act. We've been paying off the bulk fuel arrears, folks that have applied already for energy assistance in federal fiscal year 21 this year. So we're estimating that that next payment should be about $15 to $20 million. Hopefully, we're hoping to get that out by next week, Wednesday. I know the moratorium is April 15th, but not all utilities are disconnecting at April 15th. So, and they know that these payments are coming. So that's what's different this year for us, and what kind of was a little different from last year as well. Besides, we also have an online portal that we stood up. Our systems team quickly put up an online application where people can apply online, because a lot of our offices were closed. They were able to take applications over the phone. And so, but we wanted a place where people could go in and, enter their own information and apply online when the pandemic hit. And so we stood that up, and that's energybenefit.wi.gov, where you can apply online.
That's a really good resource. Thank you. What is the first step for a customer who's behind on their bill? Is it going to that website? Who would you recommend they reach out to first? And how would they know what all they're eligible for?
Right. What we did here is we sent out postcards, and we also emailed, because we started collecting email addresses for folks, and also a postcard encouraging them to contact our customer care center. We stood up a customer care center for this statewide applications. And so that number is 1-800-506-5596. And at the customer care center, they can do an on-demand application. So, they call in, the customer calls in, and you're right, they really don't know what they're eligible for. And those customer care representatives can, walk them through. And even if the customer care center rep needs to call them back, maybe they don't have their income right in front of them, or maybe it's not a good time, that representative will call them back whenever it's a good time for them. And so then they can go through and, take that application right away, which takes about, 10 minutes or so. And then they kind of talk to the customer and find out what their needs are, what's going on. Maybe they also need rental assistance. And then, we also know that the homeowners assistance is coming. That hasn't, we haven't received that funding yet, but the customer care center then can talk to the customer and see what their needs are, and refer them elsewhere. And then they also can talk to them about the crisis assistance, that funding that we have, to be able to work with the Class A utilities, investor-owned utilities, to set up a payment plan, depending if we're paying off their arrears, as long as they're eligible for our program. But, if they maybe need a little extra help or something like that, they would be able then also use that crisis assistance funding. So you're right, it is hard for people to understand. It's confusing for me even to kind of keep all these different pots of money separate. And the customer really doesn't need to worry about that. They should just say, I need help with my bill, and I can't make the payment arrangements, that the utilities are asking me for, right? It's too high. I can't make that payment right now. And then our intake workers should be able to take over from there and help them with that.
At what point should they call the utility?
Kristy, do you want to jump in on that one? Or I would say right away, but that's just me.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Okay.
Exactly. I think just like you described, Barb, the customer should talk to their utility first, talk to the utility about deferred payment agreement options. So how much is the utility requesting that the customer put down to avoid a disconnection or to have service reconnected if it's disconnected? The customer then should call the customer care center that you described and find out the list of benefits that they may be eligible for. And then if there continues to be an inability to, say, meet a deferred payment agreement to avoid a disconnection or some sort of impasse, the customer can then also contact the Public Service Commission and file a complaint with the commission as well. And commission staff help work with the utility and negotiate a deferred payment agreement and ensure the customer has applied for assistance and looked at all their resources as well.
Thanks, Kristy. And we'll put these phone numbers and links in the show notes, but what would be as the last resort where they would call at the PSC?
So if a customer wishes to file a complaint or ask a question of a consumer analyst at the Public Service Commission, they can do so calling 1-800-225-7729. Customers can also go to psc.wi.gov to file a complaint online.
Thanks, Kristy. All right, so I wanted this podcast to serve as a resource, especially as the disconnection moratorium is coming to an end. We reach out to a lot of policymakers, legislators, to try to help provide information for them. What are some common questions and concerns you hear from legislative offices?
What we hear usually is that I'm up for disconnection and I can't make the amount of the down payment maybe that the utility is asking for, or I can't make the amount of like Kristy mentioned, the deferred payment agreement. That would probably be, it's usually the down payment amount, and that's where we can really help through the energy assistance program with maybe the customer can only pay $100 and maybe the utility is asking for $600, and then that's where the crisis assistance, could come in and, make up that difference because that's above and beyond their regular energy assistance benefit. So I think that if looking back from the complaints that we do get, I would say that is probably the number one complaint. The customers just, it's not that they don't want to pay, they just know they can't make that down payment and they just can't keep up that way. And they don't want to fail at that.
I agree. That's what we see as well in terms of constituent complaints around utility service. By far, the most frequent complaint is that a customer is subject to disconnection or the service has been disconnected and the amount of the down payment being requested is too high for the customer to pay. And then after that, there are frequently concerns and disputes around, say, really high bills, especially maybe after we've had a particularly intense winter or summer, meter-related disputes and other charge disputes. But it's really the disconnection notices going out that drive the complaint activity.
Thanks to both of you. So, Kristy, what role does the PSC play in formally helping customers stay on track with paying their bills and settling disputes with utilities?
Our role is to oversee the utilities' customer service operations, billing practices, and collections practices, including deposits and disconnections and late payment charges. And the host of collection practices that a utility might use to collect a bill. And really, it's all about, for us, upholding the basic fundamental utility customer protections that there are in the state and ensuring that those basic rights are being upheld in the process. And it's also all about working collaboratively with utilities across the state on whether it's a customer situation that the utility would like to know how other utilities have handled it, whether it's a more in-depth policy question. There's a lot of collaboration that goes on day to day to ensure that those best practices are at work and really to, I think, collectively work together to help customers stay on track, build that payment history. And the goal is to have customers stay connected, and ensuring that the utility programs and the collections activities that are going on are, like I said, affording customers those fundamental customer rights. And so for us, a big part of that happens in our Bureau of Consumer Affairs. And that's where customers call into the contact center at the PSC to ask a question or file a complaint. And we have a team of call center staff, our consumer affairs team, who investigate complaints every day, answer questions throughout the day, and also take utility questions throughout the day and help with these policies.
That's really important work. Okay, Kristy, can you tell us about the disconnect moratorium itself? When we're referring to the disconnection moratorium, what issues are you dealing with at the PSC as the disconnection moratorium comes to an end nearly a year and a half after being in place?
That's a great question. There's a lot going on right now, as I think has already come up in the discussion around whether it's federal assistance coming into the state to help customers, disconnection activity resuming. For us, Wisconsin was one of the first commissions in the nation to suspend disconnection activity when COVID emerged. And so, like you said, it's been nearly a year and a half since utilities have disconnected service for non-payment for residential customers. So after the 15th of this month, the 15th of April, a utility will be authorized to disconnect residential service. Utilities have to send out disconnection notices before disconnecting. And so those disconnection notices might already be in the mail by this time. They're 10-day disconnection notices. So they would have gone out on the 6th in order to disconnect, say, on the 16th of April. So utilities that are planning to disconnect service for non-payment also have to have filed a disconnection plan with the commission. And we have those plans on file, and we're continuing to review those and tracking all of the activity around this. So gathering utility data on arrears levels for customers, number of disconnection notices sent versus actual disconnections performed. Those are metrics we'll start getting at the end of this month. The impacts of the federal financial assistance on arrearage levels at the utility. Once that information continues to become available, we're also tracking the impacts of flexible payment agreements on customer payment behavior at this time as well. And then as customers contact us with complaints, we're looking at what is the utility's disconnection plan that's on file and working with the customer to help connect them to assistance or to negotiate a deferred payment agreement. There's just a lot going on in that area. And I think I'll say so far, we have not had a large influx of customers contacting us. So the disconnection notice activity across the state hasn't begun to drive that increased complaint activity to our call center. There are some large utilities in the state that are slowly issuing disconnection notices or voluntarily holding off as funds for assistance become available, like Barb said. So that's a little bit of it. And the commission has put a number of protections in place. So we're really watching for those protections and ensuring as we receive customer complaints that those are being upheld. So the commission, when it authorized disconnections, also said a utility has to continue to offer deferred payment agreements. Usually a utility offers one deferred payment agreement, and if it's broken, the utility doesn't have to offer a second one. At this time, utilities have to continue offering a second or third deferred payment agreement as long as the customer is willing to enter into it. There are also medical emergency rules still in effect around a positive COVID-19 test in the house. So we're watching out for those in terms of complaints as well, making sure the payment agreements are 100% reasonable based on the customer's circumstances, and also making sure that the utilities are following their arrearage management plans.
The utilities brought forth arrearage management plans to the commission last week. What did some of those plans look like?
There was a pretty wide range and variety of plans filed, but the utilities had to file arrearage management plans, which were basically plans to manage arrears in such a way that would minimize the impacts to an individual customer who is not staying caught up on bills, finding a way to keep that customer connected, to work with the customer on payment plans. And then the plans also had to speak to minimizing the overall impact to ratepayers of arrears. at the same time. And so some utilities plans included measures, for instance, offering deferred payment agreements with really low down payment amounts or no down payment. A lot of times if a customer is in arrears, and it's not uncommon for a customer to say have $1,000 or $1,200 past due on a bill, the down payment for that might look like $600 or $700, even for a low income customer. And right now utilities are saying, we will enter into that for $100, or we'll enter into that payment agreement for $0 down, and we'll just get started. And so that's probably one of the most common offerings in the arrearage management plans. But some utilities went so far as to say, we're going to develop an arrearage forgiveness plan at our utility, and we're going to find a way to show that we can forgive arrears and operate a cost-effective program that allows us to do that and balance it by saving on collections costs and our call center costs and our disconnection and reconnection costs. And we'll put that instead toward forgiving arrears and encouraging repeat payment behavior at a decreased payment level. So that was more on the proactive side, and just some really exciting models for programs coming out of that. And for some utilities, it's more just about the flexible payment plans. Some utilities were forgiving late payment charges during the period in which that was available, waiving credit card fees, and some of the more day-to-day collections activities had been made more flexible.
I think that does sound really innovative. I know some of the concerns I've heard throughout the course of the pandemic is that, you know, when people aren't paying, but they're still receiving services, does that push costs onto other customers who are paying their bills still? So I think it sounds like the utilities really have put their thinking caps on in what you just described, in terms of trying to come up with ways that both help customers who are in arrears as well as protect all the other customers.
Exactly. I'd say for me, it's just a really big takeaway is that there are innovative solutions that are win-win solutions or cost-effective solutions that can cut down on some of this time and effort and the dollars spent around the collections and be redirected toward helping the customer in terms of outreach and education and decrease monthly bill amounts and getting the customer out of that arrearage situation. And I think there's still a lot of potential in that area in the state for utilities who haven't adopted a model like that to do some research and explore whether there's the potential for that type of model at their utility.
All right, so we have come to our final question. If you had all the power in the energy industry, what would you do first? Kristy, do you want to get us started?
That sounds great. I think some of what I would do is already starting to happen, which is really exciting. One example is the commission has begun to collect from investor-owned utilities analysis on customer energy burden. And that's going to be collected as part of the utilities' annual reports. And so the first annual report with energy burden analysis will be due June 1st of this year. And I think looking at those energy burden levels is such an important step. And we're excited as a consumer affairs and staff team to review that information and present it to the commission shortly after too. In addition to that, really looking at other feasible, cost-effective win-win solutions to decrease energy burden and utility burden. For example, energy efficiency and renewables can provide the economic, environmental, public health benefits, but they also reduce household energy burden for a really long period of time. And so I'm really interested in, for example, this pay as you save model for inclusive financing for energy efficiency improvements. And this is a model that's been used on rental dwelling units as well as owner-occupied dwelling units and works equally as well. And it is a way to have the utility pay the upfront cost of the energy efficiency measures, and then the customer, with the amount saved on the bill, pays month by month for those energy efficiency improvements, but doesn't actually pay cash. And so I think there are programs like that in the utility arrearage forgiveness programs I was talking about earlier. We have 5 of those programs right now in Wisconsin, and I believe we're going to be getting applications for at least 2 more new programs, and if not expansions. Those are really areas that I would love to see continue to grow and gain traction.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kristy. What about you, Barb?
It was a really good question, Kristen. So I think that in Wisconsin, it would really be beneficial if we at the division, right now, we are able to access the customer's utility bills. And so we're able to pull that data automatically. And we also are able to verify Social Security numbers through our partnership with DHS. So it would be nice if we could expand on the data sharing with somebody like Department of Revenue, those that file state income taxes, so that we could just have a portal to be able to pull that income verification, same like unemployment. And then also for food share, customers are reporting their income for a lot of these other programs. And so it would really be helpful, I think, if we could grow. And it's interesting because people are very protective of their data. It's just, and I understand why with the PII, I totally get that. But if the customer does sign a release and they're fine with us using that, just like, using, having the portals with the investor-owned utilities to retrieve that information, it would be so easy for the customer to apply for energy assistance because they're already providing usually their data for this, some of these other programs. So I think that would really streamline them. And we definitely, I think we'd be able to serve more people in Wisconsin that way. And especially efficiently, it would put, less demand. Our at-risk population, they usually have so much going on in their household. And I just think that this would be a more effective, efficient way for them to be able to apply. That's if you have the magic wand, that would be it.
Love it. We might need to register you as a lobbyist, Barb.
Right. There we go.
Show up at the Capitol and start, telling legislators this story, because I think that is a really great example of how government can work better for those it's attempting to serve.
Right. Absolutely.
Streamlining processes.
Right. Otherwise, we're having the consumer or customer, whatever, do this multiple times. And it would be really nice if Wisconsin could take the leadership and, do this more nationwide. So
cool. Thanks for sharing that.
You bet. Absolutely. Thanks again for, having us. I really appreciate it. And I know Kristy does too. So we love talking about.
Thank you for taking the time during this very busy time for both of you.
Yeah, thanks for having
us.
Thank you again to Kristy and Barb, and to all of our listeners. A reminder to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already, so you never miss one of our monthly episodes. You can also follow along on Twitter at The Electric Wire. Thank you also to the members of the Customers First Coalition, as always, for your support of our organization and our podcast. The members of the Customers First Coalition are the Citizens Utility Board of Wisconsin, Dairyland Power Cooperative, the IBEW 2150, Madison Gas and Electric, the Municipal Electric Utilities of Wisconsin, Renew Wisconsin, Wisconsin Electric Cooperative Association, and WPPI Energy. We'll be back in May. Thanks again for listening.